The Chinese in the 12th century were first to wind excess fishing line on their rods before unreeling it back into the water. Today's reels have gears to quickly deploy and retrieve the line. They're made with lightweight, high-strength materials, so you can catch bigger, stronger fish, or at least try to. Antique reels are heavy and have just one speed. Modern reels have 2 speeds and fewer parts. To make a reel's frame, a computer-guided router cuts 4 openings in a cylinder made of aluminum. They let the angler, the person fishing, access the spool inside the frame to undo any knots in the line. Another cutting machine shapes a stainless steel blank into a spindle, the inner part of the reel around which the fishing line winds. It also carves 2 pinion gears into the piece. The high gear retrieves line faster, the low gear gives more power to fight big fish. The machine's cutters are made of carbide, an extremely durable material. Even so, workers change them weekly. Another cutter carves the reel's main gears, a high speed and a low speed. These main gears interact with the pinion gears to make the spool revolve. This lets the angler wind line back onto the reel. This cutter drills small indentations, part of the reel's drag system, which lets the angler adjust line tension to fight large fish. The next cutter engraves the company name into one of the reel's 2 side plates. Yet another cutter engraves the drag settings, 1 through 4, and then strike. Strike lets the angler fight fish weighing up to 2,000 pounds. Next, a process called anodizing. The side plates are dipped in a series of chemical baths that bind a gold-colored dye to their surface. Now, time to assemble the fishing reel. First, they apply waterproof grease and lubricant to 2 safety catches that prevent an angler from applying too little or too much line tension. A worker then adds a bearing to support the spindle in the spool. He also installs what's called a click plate that makes clicking sounds when a fish takes the line. He adds a stainless steel spindle sleeve and drag plate, and a sturdy synthetic washer. He then adds the spindle and pinion gears to the spool. The spool is now ready to go into the frame. Using a rotating clamp to steady the reel, another worker installs a stainless steel fixture that attaches the reel to the rod, and installs the left side plate with 6 screws. This metal spring and plunger enable the angler to change speeds from high to low with just the push of a button. A metal clip locks the mechanism in place. A little grease to the gearing, then a plastic cover, and the spool is fully assembled. He inserts it in the frame and installs a harness lug, used to attach the reel to what's called a fighting harness, worn to prevent a fish from yanking the rod out of your hands. Now the worker mounts the right side plate. He adds a lever and a knob to adjust the drag settings. You turn the knob clockwise for more tension, counterclockwise for less. Next, he installs the stainless steel and plastic knob you use to reel in the line. And finally, the button for switching speeds. He tests the drag lever and gears to check if they engage properly. He puts it into high speed to see if the safety catch prevents what's called free spooling, a glitch that could send a half mile of line flying wildly out of control and leave you reeling. If you take your fishing seriously, chances are you're hooked on lures. If worm bait is like hamburger, then lures are like filet mignon. They attract fish by either mimicking the food they like, impersonating a minnow for example, or by reflecting light. Lures come in many shapes and sizes. They can measure up to a foot long and weigh as much as 3/4 of a pound. They're usually made of brass. This model is from a brass sheet that's less than 3/100 of an inch thick. It goes into a press that's outfitted with a series of dies to progressively cut and shape the lures, churning out 2,000 of them per hour. This looks like one fast operation, but it's really 4 consecutive steps. The first die stamps the company name and lure model number, punches a slot down the middle, and punctures a hole on each end. The second die scores the outline. The third cuts it out. The fourth and final die forms the piece into a spoon shape, which is why this type of lure is called a spoon. This shape makes it move in the water like a small fish. That blue object at the bottom right is an air jet. It blows the lures coming off the press into a collection bin. Lures vary in size, shape, and texture, and plating them in different metals creates reflective effects in the water. All these factors determine the type of fish the lures attract. The metal plating process is called electroplating because electricity is the key to it all. Workers wire up the lures, submerge them in an acid solution, then run a negative current through them. They run a positive current to the plating metal, in this case copper nuggets. The acid dissolves the copper into particles laced with a positive charge. This draws them to the negative charge lures, which they coat in an even layer of copper. After a thorough rinse, the racks go into the next tank for nickel plating. Then another rinse and into another tank for silver plating, the final finish. Silver plating requires undercoats of copper and nickel. To prevent the silver from tarnishing, workers coat the lures in clear lacquer using the same plating process. Lures plated in 24 karat gold don't need lacquering because gold doesn't tarnish. Now for the cosmetics. One way to decorate the lure is by what's called pad printing. An automated machine applies ink to a metal plate with the design etched into it. A silicone pad stamps the plate picking up the design, then stamps the lure transferring it. This is a two-color design, so there are two pads at work. It's quick-dry ink, so the colors don't smudge. Another way to decorate lures is to apply decals. They adhere with waterproof glue that's specially designed for the fishing industry. After decorating, workers attach a three-pronged hook, a treble hook, to a split ring. That's the ring at both ends of the lure to which the fishing line and the hook will be attached. Some models have decorated hooks known as dressed hooks. The idea is to add a color accent to make the lure look more like the fish's prey. To do this, they first wind a nylon thread around the shaft of the hook, then trim off the loose end. Next, they lay together two different colored hackles. Hackles are the filaments of a rooster's neck feathers. They wrap them around the shaft of the hook on top of the nylon thread. The different colored feathers blend together. The filaments project from the head of the hook to disguise it. Workers wrap them with more nylon thread to secure them in place. Here a decal is applied to a different style of lure called a spinner, because it spins like a disco ball reflecting light to attract the fish. The final step is to attach the hook to the lure. Depending on its complexity and number of platings, a lure takes between 45 minutes and 2 hours to make. That's a lot of specialized time and effort for fish bait that's nothing short of alluring. About the one that got away? Well, maybe you just didn't use the right fly. Fly fishing is one of the most challenging types of sport fishing, and tying a good fly to the end of your line can make all the difference. Trick the fish. The fly imitates an aquatic insect or tiny fish, something the fish you're trying to catch likes to eat. The fly maker starts by placing a hook in a vise. Using a tool called a bobbin holder, he winds a waxed nylon thread carefully and tightly around the shank of the hook, then cuts off the excess. This fly will simulate a moth-like insect called a caddis, a primary food for trout. A caddis in the pupal stage of its life cycle, just before it transforms into an adult. The fly maker first attaches a special synthetic yarn to create the tail. He secures it along the middle of the hook. He then takes another synthetic material called dubbing to create the body. He spins the dubbing between his fingers onto the thread. The wax on the thread helps it adhere. He winds the dubbing over the base of yarn to form the body. Then he folds some yarn over the dubbing and attaches it with more nylon thread. Then he cuts off the excess. Good fishing flies not only look like the real thing, they also act like it, mimicking the insect's natural movements. When a caddis pupa is ready to transform into an adult, it swims to the surface of the water, then deploys its wings. The shimmering yarn on this fake caddis will give the illusion of the air bubbles this voyage to the surface creates. To simulate the wings, the fly maker uses dubbing made of deer fur. He cuts off the long, coarse hairs known as guard hairs. Then places them into a device called a hair stacker. He shakes it, turns it to the side, then opens it up. All the hairs are now evenly aligned. He measures the length he needs to create the fly's wings. Then he attaches it, leaving a portion sticking out the front to form the insect's head. Next, he uses a tool called a whip finisher to tie a sturdy knot made of several loops. This caddisfly imposter is now ready to trick some trout. There are thousands of styles of flies. You choose which to use according to which fish you're feeding on at the moment. Fly makers use many types of natural and synthetic dubbings to form and decorate their flies. Feathers, animal hairs, metals, and plastics often dyed brilliant colors. Tying a great fly won't always snag you the catch of the day, but if you maneuver the fly to make realistic movements in the water, the fish will buy it, hook, line, and sinker. With the test piece of fishing line approved, an automated system now transfers the line to retail-sized spools. It loads about 450 feet of line onto each one. A worker applies a label with product details and packages it in a cardboard box. It takes about 17 days to braid, color, and process a single spool of synthetic fishing line. Strong but very thin, it can be cast and reeled in with ease. If the fish take the bait, they may not be able to get away. Flake foods for aquarium fish were invented in the middle of the last century. And what a difference this invention has made! Before they came along, pet fish were fed live food from rivers and streams, a food source that wasn't always accessible. The invention of flake and other dried foods made life in a fish tank a whole lot easier. Just a few sprinkles and dinner is served. It's not much like the live water fleas or bloodworms the fish would feed on in their natural environment, but it contains the nutrients and vitamins they need. These dried tidbits can be supersized to appeal to larger fish that prefer to chow down on something more substantial. Each formulation consists of up to 40 different ingredients. The main components are fish meal, wheat flour, soy and paprika oils. They also add food colorant because fish are drawn to certain colors. They follow a precise recipe and measure the ingredients carefully. They blend the smaller components together first. They include lecithin, a blending and thickening agent also found in foods humans consume, and calcium for bone strength. The main ingredients, the fish meal, flours, and oils, are piped from silos into big tanks and mixed with hot water. They add the smaller premix and blend everything together to produce a thick slurry. They spray the slurry onto the surface of a series of rolling heated drums. As it flows over these drums, the slurry cooks and dries into a thin film that's like a paper sheet. As the sheet rolls off, a long rotating blade chops it up to produce big flakes. They're pretty chunky at this point and will need to be broken up into bite-sized versions. Next, they fall down a chute and into a plastic bag. A worker transfers them by the bagful to the next conveyor. The various colors represent the different formulations. The green are veggie flakes, while the red are protein-based. They all head into a spiraling device known as the tumbler. It spins to toss the flakes around. This mixes and breaks them into smaller flakes. After several minutes in the tumbler, the flakes fall onto a series of screens to grade them by size: small, medium, and large. They land in separate bins, now mixed and sorted by size. Meanwhile, the production of fish food sticks is underway. Machinery presses a food mash through the small holes of an extruder plate to create spaghetti-like strings. As the strings exit, rotating knives cut them into sticks. The sticks dry and solidify. A worker routinely examines them for size and form. The next worker wheels a hopper full of flakes above a chute and removes the trapdoor. The mix falls down one floor onto the packaging line. At the same time, a column of empty cans heads toward the flakes. The fish food flakes fall through special openings that funnel them into the cans. Machinery cuts out aluminum foil caps and slaps them on the tops of the containers. Hot circular irons then seal the caps to the cans. This conveyor belt is also a computerized scale, which keeps track of the amount of product in the cans. Then devices spin by to twist plastic lids onto the threaded rims of the cans. As the cans pass by on a carousel, applicators press glue-backed product labels onto them. And these fish food flakes are done. In its various formulations, dried fish food offers a range of feeding options. Some contain additives that enhance the growth and color of the fish. Others are geared to a fish's specific tastes, because even pet fish can be discriminating diners.